Using physical pain to emotionally link back is by far the most out there way to discover unacknowledged feelings that lay under the surface that you still carry about your past. I mean, how do you experience physical pain and use it to go through the 6-step process to emotionally link back? Well, it's actually pretty simple. As it's not the physical pain that we'll be working with, but we'll be working with how the physical pain that you live with makes you feel on an emotional level. And what does the physical pain stop you from doing? The answers to these kinds of questions could cause lots of painful feelings to come to the surface, telling you things like, out of your family and the friends that you know, you always seem to be the one that suffers. And it's this type of emotional pain that we want to come to the surface. So we can use a 6-step process on it, allowing us to turn all that fear and emotional pain that we have and turn them into feeling good, which is exactly what we'll be learning how to do in this video. This is I Want to Know How to Feel Good. Let's get straight into this. Step 1. Finding emotional pain to work with. The first step to take is to focus on your center and find the question that creates the biggest fear, the most stress, or the largest amount of emotional pain that you can find about your physical pain. You can either try thinking of questions to repeat to yourself or repeat each question that comes to mind so you can get a sense of how each question makes you feel. And you're looking for the question that creates the strongest emotional reaction or creates the most fear. As like I say, we need strong emotional pain or fear to work with. To make it easier for us to better understand this process, we'll use a common question that's asked by many people who live with physical pain, which is, will this pain get worse over time? But this question is just an example of a question that you could ask, and I encourage you to search and discover what question creates the strongest emotional reaction within you when you repeat it to yourself. Once you've found the question that creates the strongest painful emotional reaction, then it's time for step 2. Step 2. Once you've found your question, it's time to turn it into a statement. Once you've found the question that creates the strongest painful emotional reaction, it's time to turn it into a statement. So using the example that we are working with, instead of asking, will this pain get worse over time, we would change it to, this pain will get worse over time. And though it causes emotional pain, your guidance feelings will still be working as you swap a dead-end kind of emotional pain that you can't do anything with as you ask the question, to an emotional pain mixed with lightness that you can work with when you repeat it as a statement. Carry on repeating your statement to yourself until you feel or sense that you've built up enough of the feeling within you, and it begins to feel heavy when you repeat the statement to yourself. Step 3A. What feelings are you experiencing right now? Once you feel or sense that you've built up enough of this painful feeling within you, then it's time to use your guidance feelings to figure out what feeling you are experiencing right now. As you focus on your center, choose a feeling that you think the emotional pain could represent, and repeat it to yourself a few times until you are sure if you feel a heavier feeling or a pain mixed with lightness feeling. Once you've found the correct feeling that the emotional pain represents, repeat it to yourself until you reach the high point of the pain mixed with a light feeling creates, and you begin to feel heaviness, signaling that you've come to an emotional change point, which means it's time for step 3B. Step 3B. Connecting your two statements together. At this point, you know the statement about your physical pain that creates the strongest emotional reaction, and you can sense how you feel about it, which means it's now time to connect these two parts together in one statement that sounds natural for you to say. Using the example we've been working with, let's say the feeling we discovered wasn't that we felt scared or terrified, like we'd assumed we'd feel after repeating such a statement as, "This pain will get worse over time," but the feeling we discovered was that we felt happy, which is what caused us to experience the pain mixed with lightness. We would then begin repeating as we focused on our center, "This pain will get worse over time and that makes me feel happy." Okay, it's time to back up a little bit and see what's going on here. Why on earth would we feel happiness because we think our physical pain will get worse over time? This makes no sense at all. That's the exact reaction I would have had before I understood how our feelings communicate to us. When it seems as though what you are discovering makes no logical sense, but it still makes you feel light feelings from your guidance feelings, if you carry on following those light feelings, you'll see for yourself that your emotional self knows exactly where it's leading you. The example I'm using, that this pain will get worse over time and that makes me feel happy, is actually a personal discovery that I once worked with whilst I was working through this method. Back in 2019, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. But for 10 months before the diagnosis, I was on sick waiting for different scan appointments to come through. So for 10 months I laid on the sofa in pain and I worked on my emotions, including my fears of the future. And on a few occasions I used the pain in my chest to help me emotionally link back, and in one of the sessions I discovered I felt this pain would get worse over time, and I also discovered that that made me feel happy. So go figure. Step 4. Wonder and wonder to let your emotional self take over.
Dr. Davis, telephone please. Dr. Davis, telephone please.
Holding on to the feelings that you've been building up in your body, it's now time to wonder and wonder when, back in your childhood, you experienced the statement that you have just discovered. And we do this by asking ourselves a question whilst focusing on our center. Whatever statement you are working with, you would ask, when back in your childhood did you experience your newly discovered statement? So using my example, I said and repeated, when in my childhood did I think my pain would get worse over time and that made me feel happy? As you repeat the question to yourself, your role is to focus on your center, let your curiosity build up, let your brow furrow, as it's your genuine curiosity that you experience which shows your emotional self that you truly do want to know the answers to your question. And look out for a painful childhood memory pop into mind, no matter what childhood memory it is. Once a childhood memory pops into mind, and as long as it's a painful or a sad one, then it's time for step 5. Step 5. Once a childhood memory pops into your mind.
Dr. Davis, telephone please. Dr. Davis, telephone please.
No matter what memory pops into your mind, as long as it's from your childhood and it's a painful one, then this is the memory that your emotional self wants you to work with. The memory that came to my mind when I emotionally linked back was the time when I broke my ankle whilst I was at school. But the reason why I was happy was that no matter who I spoke to about how I broke my ankle, and no matter how much physical pain I experienced, I was always shown lots of care and compassion from the people around me whenever I told my story. I was waiting on hand and foot, and at the time I really enjoyed that. But once my ankle had healed, it wasn't long before I was back into my old usual boring routine, and unbeknownst to me, I had carried a positive reason to be in physical pain, which later in the day after emotional linking back and a good few hours after my roaring session, I had an answer popping into mind letting me know on an emotional level why in my 20s I used to self-harm. And even though I wasn't consciously aware of it, but a deeper part of me believed that when other people saw I was in physical pain, like when I broke my ankle, people would treat me better and with more kindness and compassion. And back when I used to self-harm, in my mind I was blaming other people when I didn't even know that I held this belief within me. That when I was physically hurting, I was treated better and that made me feel happy. Whatever memory comes to your mind, it's time to repeat the childhood scenario and add in how you feel about the current scenario. So using my example, I repeated to myself, when I broke my ankle, I was happy that the people around me was helping me. Once you've built up enough of this feeling and you've come to the next emotional change point, it's time for step 6. Step 6. Getting in touch with the animal part of you.
Dr.
Now you have a childhood memory to work with and you know how you feel about it. We're going to invoke the animal part of you to come to the surface, step in and take over. And we do this by repeating the statement that you discovered, but at the end of it we're going to ask, and what does the animal part of me think about this? So using the scenario we've been working with, I said, when I broke my ankle, I was happy that the people around me was helping me, and what does the animal part of me think about this? Whatever childhood memory you have been working with, adding and what does the animal part of me think about this will allow either anger, rage or animalistic feelings to build up within you, or it will allow tension that represents anger, rage and animalistic feelings to build up. And once you feel you've built up enough of this feeling, step into the roaring room and in your mind see the scenario happening in front of you, separate the past you from the other people and roar out all of that energy at them. And as you do, repeat in your mind, and what does the animal part of me think about this? Which will allow those feelings of anger and rage to come to the surface so you can roar them out. And carry on with your roaring session until you feel like you've burnt up all of the energy from those feelings of anger, rage and animalistic feelings. I'll end by saying that once you step out of the roaring room and your emotions have settled, you can put your roaring session to the test by thinking about the original question again, the one that caused you to experience emotional pain. And you'll see more than likely that it doesn't hurt anymore if you feel anything for it at all, which is a signal that you've done enough work on yourself and you can enjoy your new, good and more positive feelings. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.